I hereby call to order this committee of the whole meeting for Monday, November 10th, 2025. The time is 8:01 a.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ann Hart,
Here.
Kristen DeCastro,
Here.
Allison Pavlis,
Here.
Amy Paling,
Here.
Katie Hilton,
Here.
Judy Berlin,
Here.
Aaron Stone.
Thank you. I seek a motion to approve the minutes of the October 20th, 2025 Committee of the Whole and Executive Session meetings.
I move to approve the minutes of the October 20th, 2025 Committee of the Whole and Executive Session meetings.
May I have a second? Second. The motion has been made and seconded. Board members, are there any comments, errors, or omissions to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, may I have a roll call vote?
Ann Hart,
Yes.
Kristen DeCastro,
Yes.
Allison Pavlis,
Yes.
Katie Hilton,
Yes.
Judy Berlin,
Yes.
Amy Paling.
Yes. Motion carries. We will start this morning's meeting with an update from Facility Development Committee. Mrs. DeCastro.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Boltemeyer to give an update on the WJHS construction project.
Okay, thank you. All right, so a couple things we're going to go over for this agenda item. One is the bid results, and then the second item is just kind of looking at the financial impact that goes with it. Let me share my screen. I'll dive into the results. Okay. All right, so here are the results. And since we have several new board members, and this is our first construction bid since several of the board members have joined the board, just wanted to walk through the process. So, we went through a lengthy design process where we have multiple budgetary checks, and Nicholas and Associates does that on our behalf. And then early October, we went out, the bidding process started, we went out to bid. During the open bidding process, there's always a mandatory pre-bid meeting where those contractors can ask questions. It also, from our perspective, helps to know how many contractors may be interested, especially given that we have multiple bid packages or trade areas. And they can ask questions. There's addendums issued. And then we open the bid where it's confidential. They submit it with a sealed packaging, and we open them during a documented and published meeting. So for this bid, we had 4 bid package areas, kind of site work, general trades, HVAC or mechanical, and then electrical as well. We had the base bid, which is primarily the windows throughout the junior high, many of which, or nearly all of which, are original to the building and in desperate need of being replaced. And then we had 7 alternate bids. And the way the bidding structure works is the board has the ability to accept or reject all alternates, but to accept any alternates, you have to accept the base bid. So let's dive into the results. When I look at the base bid and the document that I've got displayed here, plus what I shared with the board members have their own copy, we have base bid plus alternates 1A, 2A, and then maybe 2B, 2C, and 3. Near the bottom here, I have totals 4.6 million if we include 2B, and then 4.5 if we do not. Later on in the meeting, we'll have some further discussion about the alternates in 2A, 2B, 2C. One thing to keep in mind, our last budgetary check with Nicholas was about 700,000 higher than what the results came in. So that's always good to see that we had some competitive bidding, and that on bid day, we saw the number come in lower than what we had been seeing earlier on. The recommendation that we have is to approve the base bid, alternates 1A, 2A, 2C, and then 3. 2B is kind of pending further discussion. For the two items I have on here in red at the bottom, we have the lobby renovation at $325,000, and we have the alternate for the drop-off and pickup lane at almost $2 million. Those items are being recommended to reject next Monday. And as far as the work related to those, those actual, since those are like actual amounts, those are just a bit too high for what we were looking to achieve. I don't think it would be wise for us to pursue those pieces of work at those prices. I think as we talked internally, kind of our goal is to take a look at this, see if we can come up with some ideas that would reduce the overall cost for those two items that would allow us to achieve some of those objectives. And then I think at this point, the most likely scenario is we would try and target the summer of 2027 for those items, meaning we would kind of pause for now, proceed with the base bid plus those other alternates, and go from there. One thing to note on my sheet, I have that orange highlighted number from Helm. One of the things that Nicholas does immediately after our bid opening is for whoever is the apparent low bidder, they reach out to them and conduct a scope review with the apparent low bidder, just to ensure that they understood the scope of work and there were no mistakes made. After Helm completed their scope review, they requested to withdraw their bid. They realized they had made some errors in reading the plans. So with that said, that means that Effie Moran was the second lowest. They would be the recommended winner for bid package 3. So we have representatives from both STR and Nicholson Associates. So besides them, I'm happy to answer any questions for the board related to any of the base bid, the alternates, what we saw, what we're looking at. And then pending any questions, I can jump in, or if the board would prefer, I can just switch over to the financial impacts of this, of these bids.
Any questions from the board? Judy?
Forgive me for not knowing the answer to this, but bid package number 3, the HVAC,
Yes.
what is it? We're air conditioning or heating, or what is it?
What is it doing?
What does it cover?
Okay, so primarily, feel free, Pat, anybody else. Going off my memory, within the base bid, we have some in the lobby or the entryway to the junior high. There's some mechanical equipment that is in need of replacement. And some controls work that goes with it. So that's what that is.
Hi, I'm Sandra Moon with STR Partners. In addition to the base bid, includes all the exterior windows. And within the windows, there's also the ventilation that comes in through some of the louvers and stuff too. So some of the mechanical also is included with the building envelope.
I have a question too. For under Monarch Construction, where the lowest bid, some of these are so drastically different. Was there a scope review done with there too? I mean, is there any thoughts on that?
Yeah, scope review was done with each of the contractors, and the ones that I've highlighted in bold, they have confirmed that they are comfortable and ready to proceed with the amounts that they bid.
Great.
Just to sort of take a step back, I know we're going to cover 2A, 2B, and 2C.
Yep.
But so the base bid is just the windows. That's talking like replacing all the windows, right?
Yep.
And then doors and storefronts, that's
So yeah,
just the front doors.
so yeah, so within that scope of work, there's a lot of doors and storefronts, which the storefront is really just referencing the windows to the side of the doors in those cases. Many of those door slash storefront areas throughout the building are in need of replacement, like the windows throughout the building. The only one that I can think of that's new that we just did a couple of years ago is on the science wing, which would be the southeast corner of the building. That one is not being touched because that was just done a couple of years ago. But all the rest also included in that total, which is 526,000, is would be the east side of the cafeteria wall, where right now it's all windows. And we were gonna take that down and redo that wall where it'd be, I think, some windows, some masonry. There's also, I believe, one of the classrooms just past the office has a ton of like storefront windows like you would see entering a business. We're gonna take that out and make that more consistent with the other classrooms, where it would just, you wouldn't be able to see through, and you would just have a door that, primarily a wood door that just has like a small window. So that is the bulk of, or that is the work in 1A.
Okay, and does that include the back door, like by the athletics back door, that thing? That area?
Yes, the doors by, I guess it would be the north entrance by the cafeteria, that one. And then there's also the other entrance by the gym that would be like facing the play fields. That one's included as well.
Okay, and then when you're talking about like the lobby renovation, which may or may not be recommended, but would that include the front lobby only, or does that include like the lobby by that back entrance?
So the lobby renovation that we're rejecting the work included in that is just ceiling and the wall. Like as you walk in, it would be the wall that is the entryway of the auditorium. So like all the windows, doors in that curved glass wall that we see as soon as we walk outside, plus the benching that's on the inside, and the mechanical stuff in the lobby, all of that's being replaced as part of the base bid.
Okay, and then just the last thing, just to have clarification, then that $2 million number.
Correct.
What that was that extension of the driveway?
Yeah.
And going all the way north?
Yes. Yeah.
So does what we're doing affect the drop off or the driveway situation at all?
No. What we would recommend for approval, like everything outside would remain the same pending another review or plan to try and figure out a way to reduce costs, which is obviously likely a reduced overall size and changing of the footprint.
Okay, so if we chose to do the windows now, then it wouldn't affect the ability to do the driveway later
No.
on, right? It would
No.
just maybe be a two-step process or something
Correct.
like
That's kind of
Okay.
how we're thinking of it right now, is trying to proceed with the windows, doors, and some of the interior stuff. Pause, let's see how things go through this year, and then as we would get to the normal timeline to start design for like any summer of 2027 project, we would start to brainstorm like, okay, what do we want a reduced redo in front to look like?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, but the earliest we would start work on that redo in front would be the summer of 2027 if we did decide to proceed.
Yeah, that's what that's kind of what our thinking right now is.
Sorry, one more. And does that affect the price? I mean, I know it's impossible to know what the pricing is in 2027, but doing them both together, is it cheaper than doing them in a two-step process?
I'm sure if you look, just looking at the bid packages, like the contractors that are doing it, like most of that falls under the site work. So it would have been Eagle contractors. The vast majority of this work is generally different than the windows and doors on the inside. So while there could have been a little bit, especially at the price point that we're looking at, I think it's worth trying to have a more refined scope of project for redoing that front, something that fits better with what we're, at least financially. So maybe a little bit, but I don't think it's worth proceeding at a price tag of $2 million.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I'll just say thank you for walking us through all of that. I think looking at all these alternates is so important in order to understand the trade-offs. And I also find it very helpful in informing, future plans and considerations. So thank you for this.
All right, let's jump to, okay, so now I'm showing 5-year projections. So, normally in December, we go through, a much lengthier with lots of different pages and lots more information. But what I wanted to do was show the board, what does the financial projections look like with the bids that we're recommending for approval. And so essentially, here's the 1-page summary of our operating funds. So the fiscal year 26 column, that's our board approved budget for this fiscal year. When you go towards the bottom, you see the beginning fund balance number. It's 37.495 million. While our audit for fiscal year 25 is not, complete at this point, I do feel pretty comfortable that that number isn't going to change in any large way. So that represents roughly a 52.1% starting point. And then you see, based upon the budget, we would end fiscal year 26 down to 43%. Keeping in mind that historically, we do see some level of actual results being better than the budget. So I think while we still have, 7.5, 8 months left of fiscal year 26, I don't know that I could give anyone a number of like where we might finish with any high level of confidence. What I've seen thus far is I do feel comfortable thinking that we will finish better than budget. I just don't know at what level. And in some years, we've had some pretty nice positive variances. So I always keep that in the back of my mind. And then I went through all the other steps that I typically do for the December on the revenue and expense side, adding what we would expect based upon what we've seen historically for salary and benefits, similar things on the purchase service supplies, capital outlay. I tried to adjust for things up or down where I knew we had smaller projects or bigger projects, within the district. On the revenue side, I've tried to capture what we've done with property taxes. And so as you look at the 5 years that are projected here, you see each of those years is above our 40%, which is our goal. And similar to what we've seen in the last few years, the projections show us in that low 40% range. One thing I keep in mind is there always is a level of conservatism in doing these projections. And typically what you see is the best information is within the first couple of years of projections, and the further you get out, like the last 2 or 3 years, we're going to make so many decisions one way or another that's going to impact those before we would actually get there, that they're helpful as a guide to know if we're on the right path. But, I wouldn't treat them as like this is written in stone. This does incorporate the amount that I'm recommending for approval next Monday for the summer of 26. So it does show if we were to proceed with those recommended base bid plus alternates, what it looks like. The one thing that is maybe a little different is as we start to look at the out years, I currently I know that we will likely want to do projects. I currently don't have projects. Couple reasons like included in this this page. Couple reasons for that. This window project is the last of our existing kind of larger plan of the multi-million-dollar projects that we wanted to complete. Like the last project that we know we really wanted to complete in this kind of 5 to 6 year window was the windows at the junior high. As we start to look ahead, we will be working on that next 5-year strategic plan. It's a natural point to go through and start to think strategically, what are those next projects? What would we like to do? Also, to keep in mind is we're coming up on the district needing to do their 10-year life safety study. There's always some level of work that arises from that study. And while that process will begin in 2026, the plan, as I kind of think about how we formulate our plan of like, what are the next series of projects, this isn't something that over the course of like 2 or 3 months, we're just gonna say, okay, here's all the projects and this is what we're gonna do for the next like 7 years. This is probably could be at least a year or maybe 2-year process of taking all the information in and starting to identify what do we want to do. One other thing to keep in mind is the last time that we issued long-term debt was 2023. When we issued that, we left ourselves the option to be able to issue some more debt for capital projects in tax year 2028, which probably would mean that we would do that in the fiscal year 2029. That just kind of looking at it at a high level, probably 10 to 12 million in bonding capacity, possibly more. So there is the ability to do projects down the road. And then one of the recent changes at the state level was when school districts go through these 10-year life safety studies, items that show up on that report, whether you're a school district that gets that back and it says 2 million or 5 or 25, or as I've seen in my career, some places they have over 100 million. Those tend to be larger districts that haven't put any money towards projects. There's the ability to issue life safety bonds for things that are on that report. So I say that as I look at this, I feel good where we're at. I recommend that the board proceed with next Monday approving the 2026 bids for the junior high, all while knowing I know we're headed, and while I'm not able to articulate because I just don't know what projects will likely occur after 2026, we do have the ability to do projects. It's not like we won't have that ability. So happy to answer any questions about where the finances are. And similar to this sheet, in December, so a month from now, I'll come back and go through the full 5-year financial projections at that point.
Great. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to school finance. Mrs. Paling.
Okay, I'm going to turn it right back to Mr. Boltmeyer for looking at our cash flow.
Okay. So I gave each of you a sheet, and I think with the information that became very public at the end of last week, I believe on Friday, this topic is maybe a bit of a moot point, but I do want to walk the board through. So I went through and analyzed our cash flow. Right now, we're in a good spot. As we get into January, I'm looking at probably something like $3.5 to $4 million is what we would have in cash on hand, maybe slightly higher. Like I said, so, the cash flow analysis tends to be a little conservative, similar to some of the other things we do. So I've been talking with Liz Hennessy at Raymond James, who we've used for our bond issuances, and the process to issue short-term borrowings kind of goes like this. We prepare the cash flow, we identify the need in total and by fund. Then the Board of Education would be required to approve parameters covering the issuance of short-term debt. Dr. Kermascoli and I are gonna talk about it this week, and probably also with Liz at Raymond James. And even though they're saying that the bills will be out this week and everything will be due by December 15th, this whole process has had a lot of delays at every step. And so the thing I'm going to confirm with Liz is whether we need to have the board just approve the resolution for issuance of short-term debt, just in case there's another hiccup that they don't foresee. Just because in my mind, just because they're able to issue the tax bills and they got all the software conversion doesn't necessarily mean that once the money starts coming in, that they're going to be able to apply it to the pins correctly and then allocate it to, think about the people in this room. When you pay your bill, it's going to us, it's going to the Trier, it's going to the village, the park district, and several other places. No guarantee that they're going to be able to, do that part properly. I hope they will. So the part we're going to confirm with Liz is our November 17th date kind of, we have to approve that resolution, or if we don't, do we really run the risk of, if there's further delays, we wouldn't be able to get money by early January. So that will ultimately determine whether we bring a resolution for next Monday night's meeting for approval. If once, in the case where you did need it, once the board approves the resolution, then it's really just the district working with Raymond James to distribute financial information to potential lenders. Raymond James could do one of two things. They could conduct a competitive bidding process, which they've done many times, or you could do a private placement. And typically what you see with private placement, our primary banking relationship is with North Shore Bank here in Wilmette, which is a part of the Wintrust Group. Many times I've seen districts or organizations that need short-term borrowing just negotiate with a short-term loan with their primary bank. That could be an option. And then if we were to need that, we would target receiving those funds by early January. But like I said, I'm hopeful based upon the information that came out on Friday that none of this will be needed, and this was just, an exercise that we went through. Hopefully for no reason. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything, but really the decision point right now is just for us to follow up and find out whether we absolutely have to approve it at November, or if it's possible to wait till our December meeting for approval, because certainly by our December meeting, which I believe is on the 15th, we would, based upon the timeline shared with us, we should have already started to receive tax money at least a couple weeks before that meeting. So happy to answer any questions on this one.
Danny, thank you so much for thinking ahead in this for us.
Hopefully we don't need it, but great to know that there are contingencies and
Mhm.
options in case we do. So thank you very
Yep.
much.
Thank you.
All right, we will then switch gears to strategy. Ms. Stone is not here this morning, but I will turn it over to Kelly Jackson for the fall SEL assessment report.
Good morning. As we do every year, we recap our SEL data from our assessments. And so today I'll share with you just an overview of our fall at 2025 SEL data, just to set our stage for our work this year. We have two assessments that we use at the elementary level. It's called Insights. There's an early elementary, which we use with kindergarten through third grade, and late elementary is for fourth grade. That is a student taken assessment. It offers questions, it's narrated in situations that kids have to solve for, basically. There is an element of self-control as a part of that as well. And then at 5th through 8th grade, we use the Panorama Mesh. It's like a survey. Students take it. It really assesses competency level as well as some school environmental, school climate kinds of things. So first I'll go through Insights. Again, it's a narrated assessment taken online. The early elementary, which is K3, measures social emotional competency development in 4 areas. So emotion recognition, social perspective taking, social problem solving, and self-control. The LE, or the late elementary, that I'll show you in a minute, it measures development in understanding others, social problem solving, self-control, and self-awareness. When we get results, they're divided into 4 performance levels, and they are above average, at or around average, below average, and well below average. So this next slide shows where we are for fall. These, you can see in the far left column is the overall area, and then it breaks apart the 4 different categories of social perspective taking, emotion recognition, social problem solving, and self-control on the right. We do generally do very well on this, even at our fall administration. So you can see in the overall category, we have 95.9% of our students in above average or average strengths. As we move down, you'll see the 2 yellow arrows there. We do target 2 areas with our lesson planning in social perspective taking and emotion recognition. And so we would hope that over the course of the year, we would grow in these areas, especially you see that emotion recognition. We would want to grow that darker green color, that 18.9%, and hopefully reduce that 9.7% in the below average. We do have the ability to break this down by classroom and by students, so we can target lessons for small groups if we need to. And we do look at all 4 areas, but those are the 2 that as a district we decided we would target. And then this is the insights late elementary. So this is just 4th grade. And so you'll see the last 2 areas, social problem solving and understanding others, are the areas that we target. Again, we look at this in the same way. We have a large amount of students in that overall category that are doing well, but we do want to grow in some of those subcategories, especially that top green area, and reduce the orange areas on the bottom. So we will target lessons using our everyday speech SEL curriculum, and then other things around the school that we do to help boost those areas up. Now turning to MESH, Mindsets, Essential Skills, and Habits is what that stands for. That's given every fall and spring to 5th through 8th graders. You'll see when we get results that they're broken down because of the way that MESH reports, it's 3rd through 5th grade. We only give it to 5th graders. So kind of like the last assessment that we saw, it's only 1 grade level, and then 6th through 8th is together. Areas targeted in the first questionnaire, which is like student competencies. It's really those SEL areas, include supportive relationships, self-management, social awareness, emotion recognition, and then in grades 6 through 8, social perspective taking. In the student supports and environment questionnaire, it targets sense of belonging, school climate, teacher-student relationships, and valuing of school. So this is the report that we have for the competencies areas. So you'll see supportive relationships, self-management, social awareness, and emotion recognition, again, on the left-hand side there. On the right-hand side of the graphs, you'll see where we fall nationally with everybody. Those are the green dots on the graph. And you'll see we're in the 80th to 99th percentile nationally across the board. When compared with middle schoolers across, we fall in the 99th percentile there. So if we're comparing ourselves to everybody across the nation that takes the MESH, we look pretty good there. But we do want to take a look at some of those lower percentages under social awareness and emotion recognition. So you'll see 75% of our students had favorable answers under social awareness, and 67% under percent favorable. So those would be areas that we would target. Again, this is 5th grade. With our Wayfinder curriculum that we use. Just to keep in mind, this is our first year of Wayfinder fully implemented at 5th through 8th grade. So they are doing lessons, one lesson a week, and our hope would be that we would increase in those areas. This is the same survey for 6th through 8th grade. You can see there's an additional section there for social perspective taking. That's not offered at the 3rd through 5th grade. survey that we give. Again, you see our percent favorable for our students and then how we compare nationally. Again, all those green dots are on the far right, meaning that we fall in the 80th to 99th percentile with everyone nationwide. And then those blue boxes on the right-hand side are where we fall as compared to middle schools nationwide. So you see areas that we could target would be social perspective taking and social awareness, relatively as they stack up with others. If we're looking at those percentiles, we would also include emotion recognition in there, or emotion regulation, excuse me, in there, because we are kind of looking at under that 75% area for our percent favorable. Now, as we move into the supports and environment, we have, this is more school climate areas. We have 2 areas that we have targeted over the past few years for our district, and those are sense of belonging and valuing of school. You'll see school climate and teacher-student relationships are also some things we measure on the mesh. All 4 of these areas are also measured on our CSCI survey that we take later on in the spring. And so we've had some, as we've looked at those and kind of looked at comparing the data that we get from both this assessment and the CSCI in the spring, it's a little bit discrepant in how it's falling out in especially those school climate areas and teacher-student relationships. It looks low compared with this percent favorable, but we score really well on the CSCI. So I'll talk a little bit about assessments in a few minutes, but just so you know, that's why we target the sense of belonging and valuing of school. Overall, those are just areas that we want to continue to focus on with our middle schoolers. You can see 5th graders, they generally start out high at the start of the year in both of these areas, and they are again. But sense of belonging is at 75% favorable and 69% favorable for valuing of school. And then again, those right-hand blue boxes are as we compare with middle schools. Again, those 2 areas, sense of belonging and valuing of school, are highlighted here for you for 6th through 8th grade. Again, if we're comparing ourselves to middle schools nationwide, we do very well in comparison, but as compared to ourselves, we would like to see those percent favorable percentages rise over the course of the year in all 4 areas. Just a little view at historical data, where we start, where we end. This is just with the mesh, but if we take a look at sense of belonging for 5th grade and sense of belonging 6th through 8th grade, you can see that we generally in the fall for 5th grade are in that 70s, mid 70s range. We do tend to fall off a little bit towards the spring. And so our hope would be to maintain or increase over the course of the year. Our patterns do not show that, but I think we have some other data that actually helps to affirm the work that we're doing with sense of belonging. And then in 6th through 8th grade, it's actually an interesting trend over the last couple of years. We've started higher. And so we would hope to continue to end higher as well, like we did last spring. This is valuing of school. We've only done that for the past 3 years, and this is our 4th year with that part of the assessment. Again, we're in the high 60s. Last year, we started at 70% favorable for 5th grade. So we'd hope to maintain that or increase it over the course of the year. And again, we started the same last year as we did this year with valuing of school with 6th through 8th grade, and we'd hope to maintain or increase over the course of the year. I think these are unique categories, especially the valuing of school. You know, 5th graders start the year and they're really excited. They're in a new building and it's an exciting place to be, and new teachers and friends. And then over the course of the year, maybe it's not so exciting. So I think that stands to reason for our 6th to 8th graders as well. On this slide, I just summarized some of the work that we are planning for this year with our SEL committee. not only based on these assessments, but also based on some of the work that we have done over the course of the last few years. And so, as I mentioned, we are in our first full year of our expanded scope and sequence for 5th through 8th grade SEL curriculum. We have our homeroom time. There's one lesson a week being implemented in homeroom. And that includes not only the Wayfinder curriculum, but some of those upstander lessons that we've highlighted over the course of the last couple of years, as well as some of the inclusivity types of lessons that we have done to highlight those themes throughout the years, or throughout the year. Additionally, just I want to mention that at kindergarten through 4th grade, we've had everyday speech SEL curriculum for the last few years, and it has been implemented. But this year we have shared a scope and sequence that really outlines one lesson a week for those teachers as well. And so really trying to target and target all of the competency areas, but also have some consistent experiences for our kids across the grade levels. Some of our action steps are shown up here under goal 2. So we're increasing student voice at all buildings through using student advisory groups and other student committees to help us understand really what does that sense of belonging mean to them. I think if you were here at the end of last year, you might remember we did just a quick survey and there was a lot of talk about the cafeteria and some of those unstructured times at Highcrest. So at Highcrest and the junior high. And so using some of that information also to play into some of these student activities that we plan throughout the course of the year. Evaluation of assessment tools. So this is where I bring in our discussion of the CSCI, but also there's assessment tools that are within our curricula that we want to take a deeper dive into. I think with doing this broad SEL assessment over the course of the year, it gives us some information. It's not exactly as actionable as I think some more regular formative information would be over the course of the year. And so, and I think this is also very sensitive to the time of year that we give it. Whereas if we're gathering information throughout the course of the year, that might give us better actionable data for our teachers and for the kids so that we can better target some of that. So our SEL committee is going to be looking at that using big assessment tools versus some of the smaller assessment tools. They also have within the curricula kind of a beginning of the year and end of the year assessment that we could use. And that's really aligned with the curriculum, which would be nice to see how that would work. And then another element of that is that there is a state mandate for mental health screeners. And so the SEL assessments that we're currently using do not screen for our mental health. And so I'm working with Kristen Swanson and her department on looking at what might be an appropriate mental health screener that we could put in place. And that might take the place of this larger SEL assessment if we use something that's more built into our curriculum. We are continuing to work to support clubs and activities. It was fun. I was at the junior high the other day and there's just posters everywhere for fun clubs and activities, and the kids are getting excited about finding their interests and finding new friends through those venues. And finally, our continued implementation of monthly themes of inclusion and belonging. As I mentioned, we have integrated those into our scope and sequences across the board for our SEL curriculum. So teachers are doing some really amazing things and also some school-wide things. As you roam the halls of the buildings, you'll see different boards talking about our names and our identities and our families. So that's really exciting to see. And with that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Kelly. Board members, questions, comments?
So I love this update always, and I really appreciate, I think it's recently we started adding where we fall, because some of those numbers look lower, but then when you look at where we are with other middle schoolers or it's very helpful.
We're pretty typical.
We're very typical, and that you can lose sight of that.
Yeah.
I mean, we just would have no other way to know. So thank you for including that. I would throw out there, I know as you're looking at these smaller assessments, and this may already be done, but my perspective is that one thing that matters so much to kids is how they relate to their peers. and the social network mapping, like seeing which kids have connections and who doesn't can be pretty profound. And to me, that's the meat and bones of it. And so if you could find out who are those kids who actually aren't thought of as having connections with other kids, it'd be really helpful.
Yeah, and that's some of the work that some of our teams at the school building are doing, but I think if we had a more formalized process, that'd be great.
That might surprise you.
For sure.
Thank you so much.
Judy?
Excuse me, the survey that you did in the spring was one of the first of any of the meetings I came to, so I paid a lot of attention to it. Not that I don't pay attention to everything, but one of the topics that came up had to do with lunch particularly at Highcrest, and kids who were maybe not scheduled for lunch with friends, and that made it very difficult. And it seemed at first like that would be a very easy thing to fix, just have, maybe even if halfway through the year, they rotated the houses, then different children would be, they would just change the combinations up. So no one was, maybe, I don't want to say, but they're unhappy, but no one was in a particular situation for the entire year. And if kids knew that we got their message and we were trying to actually act on it, that would be the thing. It turned out to be a lot harder than people thought, partly because there are kids that are not supposed to be blocked together, and it wasn't something that could be fixed in like July.
Yeah.
For September. But I'm wondering what kind of a timeline might be able to be put in place so that if you build a schedule based on that hope or that plan, it could actually be incorporated. And
Yeah,
as opposed to us thinking about it in May or something like that, or you thinking about it in May and not being able to do it because, again, it's too far down the line.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we continually talk about with our 5th through 8th grade, and especially our Highcrest building administrators. And it's something that I can bring up with them again. I think they, there are elements of scheduling that go in with those students that might not be able to mix together. But we do try to mix it up if we can across. I do know some of the clubs will span the entire lunch period, so it gives some students one time a week at least, or maybe a couple times a week, that they get to be with their friends for that whole entire period, regardless of the block that they're in. So there are some opportunities that way, and we'll continue to look for some ways to foster that. So yeah.
And I know it can be tricky because I'm aware of some instances where, a student might not have had a group to sit with at lunch in the beginning, but over the course of time was able to figure that out, and then to change it and take that comfort is a trade-off too, mid-year, because for some people, they got there, it just took time, and then it's, oh boy, we have to start over again mid-year. So they're just, trade-offs and considerations on both sides of that. Any other questions, comments on strategy? Allison?
Thank you. I know this is a lot of work and I appreciate it. And I know that it, based on, I think it was CRC, directly relates to academic performance too. So it's important in and of itself, but also as it relates to academics. And the one that really kind of tugs on my heartstrings is that sense of belonging one, and seeing those numbers, I want to give them a hug. But what Amy was talking about was trying to sort of maybe identify those. I'm wondering if you kind of slice and dice that data, like in terms of girls versus boys, or I don't know.
We don't have a breakdown for gender. We just have grade level breakdowns, but I do have breakdowns by question. And so digging in a little bit more on the questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I just
can
wonder
be
if
a
there's
good
any
exercise.
trends you can see or anything
Yeah.
like that. I know it's tricky, and I'm sure it changes throughout the year and every year, but
Every cohort, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you very
Yes.
much.
And I'll just say with the valuing of school, I also hope that we see that number come in a little bit more consistent to the fall number, because while I completely understand with, middle school and junior high, by the spring, you're getting closer to summer and, just maybe not the same level of enthusiasm, but we are comparing to a national, right? So you would think that you would see that nationally and that, but we're not. Our numbers are dropping a little bit more than the national, which is, so again, I know we're doing everything we can to boost that up. So hopefully that comes in a little stronger this spring. And then speaking of that, can you remind me when we issue the assessment in the spring?
In the spring, we do it in May.
May.
It's
Yeah.
usually early May, I want to say.
Mhm. All right. Great. Thank you very much. All right. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on any topic. Are there any audience members that would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we will continue on with our agenda this morning with old business. Is there any old business? New business? Any new business?
Wait,
Oh, old business, sorry.
I think it's listed,
The IASB.
resolutions.
Oh, correct, sorry about that. Yes, old business was the IASB Resolutions Committee.
I don't know exactly why that's on the agenda, except that it did come up at the last board meeting, so perhaps it requires a second discussion. I'm not sure. My understanding for the IASB is that they have not revised their constitution in a very long time. So this is the year that they decided to do that. And there are 10, maybe 12 resolutions, all of which came through committee and are intended to update and bring accuracy to their constitution. So I don't really see anything that's particularly controversial there. There is one resolution to be voted on, and I'm supposed to vote for the district. It was brought by the Sycamore School District. It relates to seatbelts on buses. It's actually asking IASB to support a resolution in the state legislature, so it's not like we get to make that decision. But they're asking for two things. They're asking for some flexibility in the way the seatbelts are funded, which makes perfect sense. Like, in a district that maybe is having difficulty funding the cost of putting in seatbelts, that actually does make sense. I'm a little hesitant about the second piece of it, which then extends the deadline for putting seatbelts on all buses to like the mid-2030s. Personally, I think they should have been on buses yesterday. So it's a little hard to support that, but it is all kind of one package. So if this board were to direct me to vote against it, I would do that. It's kind of hard to vote against a district that's saying, give us flexibility in funding. So, that is the only real potentially controversial question coming before IASB. I feel like a newbie at this.
Well, you are, right? So, but no, that's a great, great overview. So thank you. And so I think is the board comfortable supporting that resolution? The recommendation by IASB is to support the
Correct.
proposed resolution. Are we comfortable
I am.
supporting? Yeah. I am too, and I will be hopeful that everyone that the majority do not need until 2030 to make those changes. So thank you for doing that, Judy. Thank you. All right. Any other old business? Okay. New business?
Yeah, that's on the agenda because of me. It feels a little odd to be talking about air conditioning on the first snowy, really cold day of the year. And I know that at least the board that preceded the one I joined talked about air conditioning for 5 years straight and did a really remarkable job of succeeding in getting all of the learning spaces air conditioned. I think that was not just succeeding in getting them air conditioned, but succeeded in getting them air conditioned without going to the taxpayers for more money. I think that was an extraordinary feat that was definitely necessary and should be appreciated by the community. I think it might have been September when I asked the question, again, partially as a newbie and partly because I had a reason for asking it, about what spaces were not yet air conditioned, like was there work still to be done? And one of the things one piece of information that came out of that I focused in on was that 3 of the 4 elementary schools have cafeterias that are air conditioned. and one elementary school does not. And so that, I think, is, I'm going to ask my colleagues to look at the question of air conditioning the cafeteria specifically at Ramona School. Now, over the last couple of months, once this came up, I started talking to people. I do understand that the previous board worked very hard to make sure that there was a large space. I guess now they can hear me, right? That there was a large space air conditioned in each building. And I can completely understand the rationale for trying to do that, but the large space that's air conditioned at Ramona is the auditorium, which gets very comparatively little use compared to the cafeteria that has children, every single child in it every single day. I also heard an argument that, not an argument, but a rationale that kids are only in the cafeteria for about 20 minutes. So not so bad, but talking to parents, the comment was, well, lunch and recess are always back to back. And so either the kids go outside and being kids, they run around in the heat, because we're only talking about hot days here, right? They run around in the heat, get hot, get sweaty, and then go into the cafeteria for another 20 minutes where it's beastly warm. Or the other way around, they're in a hot cafeteria already getting hot, and by the time they get outside, they don't have, it's not an improvement for them. The third rationale that I heard for air conditioning the cafeteria at Ramona is that the PTA and other groups use that cafeteria a lot. The Ramona PTA really tries very hard to celebrate the community, and even like in September, that's actually why I asked the question. In September, there was an event sponsored by the PTA that was to honor the multicultural background of the families at Ramona, and pretty much all of the participants brought food related to their culture or their background. And I know this because I was in my daughter's kitchen when she was putting together a tray that was going to go to Ramona. And then the parents met, and I think children came too. Then a day or two later, when I asked her how the event went, the only word she could use to describe it was boiling. It was so hot in the cafeteria that they couldn't really, it became the focus of what was supposed to be a very positive event. So I'm here to ask my colleagues, as we look at what's down the road, bearing in mind that we don't have capital improvements past the middle school, that one of our focuses be looking at that cafeteria at Ramona, which, as I said, is the only cafeteria of all the elementary schools that isn't air conditioned. I will, just to be fully transparent, I did look at that sheet and see that the Wilmette Junior High is also not air conditioned. I can't speak to that. I haven't been in there when it was hot. I've been at Ramona when it was hot. But certainly if we're going to look at a package, we might also want to look at that. But I really am asking my colleagues to target this one very specific area.
I can offer a little context
Great.
about how we got here, and Corey, feel free to jump in. But I was principal at Ramona when the decisions were made by the board about large space air conditioning, and each principal, along with committee work, needed to identify the large spaces within our schools. And this was to allow the most number of students to have spaces to cool off because the classrooms weren't air conditioned at the time. And so we were all charged with that task of identifying the space. And so at Ramona, we made sure we had the library at the time air conditioned. It has since gone through a renovation, but at the time it wasn't. And the gym. We were one of the first schools to get a gym that was air conditioned because we could put the most number of students in that space during indoor recess, or if it was so hot outside during lunch recess, we were able to move them into the gym. And it also provided cool space during PE classes. So in particular, that was the thinking behind the decisions made for Ramona. Along with all the schools, we had to identify 2 large spaces until we were able to move the air conditioning project forward for all classrooms. So that's just a little context.
And I hope you didn't consider anything I was saying as a criticism of the decision-making process, because it wasn't. This is just now kind of a byproduct that has occurred, that has come to at least my attention, and that it seems like it is something for the district to look at in terms of both equity and is there a next step that we
Yep.
should be doing?
It's the evolution of any process,
Mhm.
right?
I guess I would just say, we as a board have to put it in context, right? Like, and the way I see this is, part of the next, we'll be doing a 5-year plan of what capital projects are needed. And the next step for air conditioning should, and imagining, be a part of that. And I definitely see the value of having lunchrooms air conditioned. It has a huge impact. And I also think about the gyms at some of the other schools. So I don't know how to weigh those. I think it's too early for us, but I think having that as part of the overall discussion of what will our upcoming big project be makes a lot of sense.
I agree with Amy again. That I think it's one that we can kind of add to the list when we're thinking about the next phase of kind of capital projects that we want to do, which sounds like it will be as maybe part of the strategic plan and also part of the, what was it called? Life safety?
Yeah, 10-year life safety.
Life
study.
safety plan. But for me, right now, looking at this, the sheet with the large space, I think that each of the schools has an area that's air conditioned and that can hold lots of kiddos. And I also think that it's a relatively few set of weeks, during the year that really air conditioning comes into play in the cafeteria. But I'm totally open to talking about it as part of a decision related to which project we want to prioritize over the next 5 years.
No, well, thank you for that, Judy. And yes, I know that I think the prior board, it was a decision to ensure that the learning spaces where the students and staff spend the majority of their day are healthy, comfortable, and as productive as possible. And that, with the larger spaces, that we did have some flexibility within each and every school to provide an area where they could cool off during lunch or recess. So I think we have accomplished, or at prior boards to have accomplished a great deal here, but I agree it can be something that we consider as part of the 5-year planning. Thank you for bringing it up.
I think the other piece, just to add on, is
Mhm.
that we can certainly work with Cindy and Lisa at Ramona to make sure we use the air-conditioned spaces as much as possible until future decisions are made. But to your point about, I think it was the cultural fair, maybe there was an opportunity to move that into the gym or other spaces. I don't know all the ins and outs of the planning, but we can certainly raise the question and see if we can improve upon that in the short term.
Sure, yeah, looking at those events that take place, in those first couple weeks of school year or last couple weeks of school year, and seeing if we can do a better job with that. Great, all right. Let's see here. If being no further business, we will adjourn to executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss special education, individual student matters, specific personnel, and collective negotiations, and security and building safety?
I move to adjourn to executive session to discuss collective negotiations, specific employees, individual students, and security and safety procedures.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Motion having been made and seconded, will the clerk please call the roll?
Allison Pavlis,
Yes.
Amy Paling,
Yes.
Katie Hilton,
Yes.
Judy Berlin,
Yes.
Ann Hart,
Yes.
Christina Castro.
Yes. Motion carries. We are now adjourned to the executive session and the time is 9:05 a.m.